She was born on a quiet morning, the kind of morning where even the birds sang with restraint, as if they, too, had agreed to welcome the child gently. They named her Nuru, meaning light, because for many years her parents had waited, prayed, and held their breath for a child. When she finally arrived, the entire compound felt brighter, soothed by the fragile joy she carried on her tiny back. Her father was a woodcarver whose hands were steady and warm, and her mother sold roasted yam wrapped in plantain leaves. Their home was small, but laughter lived there, and peace walked in and out freely like an old friend who never needed to knock. But light doesn't always escape darkness, not forever. One harmattan night, when the wind blew sharp and the air turned brittle, a kerosene lamp trembled on a shaky table. It fell. Flames crawled like hungry animals. Before anyone could shout her name, smoke swallowed the house. Nuru woke coughing, her small hands burning as her mother wrapped her against her chest and pushed toward the door. Her father never made it out. Her mother did, but only long enough to whisper, "My light, survive." By dawn, both parents were gone. The village mourned with heavy shoulders. Nuru wandered their small compound, touching the burnt corners of what used to be her life. Days passed, pity faded, and grief, like a quiet visitor, settled into her bones. When hunger became louder than condolences, they sent for a distant relative in the city, Aunt Kemi, a woman with bright wrappers, swift footsteps, and a tongue that loved the taste of opportunity. Kemi arrived with perfume that fought the air and bracelets that clanged like coins. She hugged Nuru as if she truly cared. Perhaps she did, but not enough. She whispered, "City life will change everything. You will thank me." Nuru believed her. Because what else could a lonely child believe? The city did not embrace her softly. It pushed, shoved, demanded. Auntie Kemi's roadside restaurant bustled from dawn till nearly midnight. Workers moved like ants. Steam rose like restless spirits. Customers argued over pepper, salt, and unpaid debts. Nuru worked quietly, scrubbing pots, serving soup, sorting vegetables. Her silence made her seem younger than she was, and people often spoke around her as though she were furniture. Kemi, meanwhile, had sharpened eyes. She loved money as though it were a god and worshipped it with all her heart. She accepted gifts from customers, laughed at promises she didn't believe, and stored every coin in a box beneath her bed. But one day, a black SUV with tinted windows parked outside the shop, and life shifted. Because from that car stepped a man whose presence felt like a full stop in the middle of a sentence. Alhaji Musa Bawa. Tall, calm, always in spotless white. His fragrance, subtle, expensive, seemed to follow him like a loyal shadow. He ate quietly, never rushed, and tipped generously. Yet each time he visited, his eyes did not study the food or the crowd. They studied Nuru. He began calling her my light. Kemi noticed. Kemi smiled. Kemi started dreaming. What began with small gifts, perfume, wrappers, envelopes, grew into heavy suggestions. Before Nuru understood what was happening, meetings were arranged, love was assumed, and a wedding was planned like a business deal already signed. Nuru was dressed in gold. People cheered. Kemi danced with satisfaction. And Nuru went from the cramped room behind a restaurant to a mansion that did not know laughter. The mansion was a place where wealth walked on marble floors, but joy had no room to sit. The other wives, beautiful, graceful, quiet, moved with practiced stillness. Their smiles never reached their eyes. Their conversations were soft, cautious, as if sound itself could offend someone. On the night of Nuru's presentation, she was led to a room that smelled of smoke, old herbs, and wet stone. A man with hollow eyes stood waiting. Malam Sani, keeper of oaths. He lifted a bowl filled with a thick, dark liquid. "You will drink," he said, "so the house may accept you." Nuru hesitated. The wives watched with unreadable faces. The air tightened. She drank. The mixture tasted like iron and sorrow. It crawled through her chest and settled like a cold stone. Something inside her sealed shut. When she returned to her room, she felt changed, but she didn't know why. Days passed. Weeks folded into months. Nuru noticed strange things. No wife had a baby, yet framed photos showed infants, plump, smiling. Their stomachs in old photos looked rounded, padded. None of the women ever spoke about childbirth. Ever. One night, when fear finally pushed her to question, she approached the eldest wife, Aisha. Aisha, why is there no child in this house? Aisha's hands trembled. Her eyes glistened with old misery. Because the drink you swallowed did more than welcome you, she whispered. It shut your womb. It shut all our wombs. Nuru froze. Aisha continued, voice breaking. The covenant feeds on our barrenness. Each bride strengthens it. Each oath renews Alhaji's wealth. We are wives only in name. We are offerings. Nuru's stomach twisted. Air left the room. The mansion suddenly felt like a cage draped in gold. 2 months later, Alhaji summoned Nuru. His voice was calm, too calm. It is time, he said. Bring me someone who carries your blood. A life offered willingly strengthens the house. Nuru's heart dropped. He meant Aunt Kemi, her last relative, her only surviving tie to her childhood. Nuru's hands went cold. Her mouth felt full of stones. She tried to protest, but Alhaji's eyes hardened. This is not a request. It is an honor to your family. Honor. That was the word men used when demanding a soul. They took Kemi. She came willingly at first, smiling, thinking wealth had finally smiled back at her. She admired the mansion, the gold, the servants. She didn't see the danger until the doors closed behind her. Alhaji offered her a cup. She laughed nervously. The chanting began. And then she understood. Guards grabbed her when she tried to run. She screamed Nuru's name until her voice cracked. Nuru stood there, frozen, trembling, helpless. The memory of her mother's dying voice echoed in her head. My light, survive. Survive. But at what cost? Kemi cried out as the ropes tightened. Her fear shattered whatever obedience Nuru had left. In that moment, something broke inside her. Something raw. Something fierce. She fell to her knees and screamed. Not to Alhaji, not to the wives, not to the room, but to the God her mother used to whisper to at dawn. Creator, look at your child. If justice still lives anywhere, come. Her voice cracked. Tears blinded her. It wasn't a prayer, it was war. Something shifted. The candles flickered. The chant faltered. The air thickened, vibrating like a drumbeat. The other wives came running, drawn by a force they did not understand. They joined her, not knowing the words, but knowing the pain. Their voices merged. The room trembled. A wind rose from nowhere, cold, sharp, violent. It blew out every candle. Alhaji stumbled backward, clutching his chest. His beads snapped. His eyes widened in terror. The covenant was breaking. And for the first time in his life, he had no control. The night of the broken covenant became a night the entire city would never forget. For as the last candle died in that ritual room, the mansion itself seemed to exhale, a long, tired breath, as though the walls were finally free to speak after years of forced silence. Something changed in the air. The tiles beneath their feet trembled, subtle at first, then stronger. The portraits of former wives on the corridor walls began to tilt, one by one, as if acknowledging a truth long buried. Dust fell from the ceiling beams like slow, deliberate rain. Nuru rose to her feet, still shaking, her voice hoarse from the prayer that had split the darkness. Aisha and the other wives clung to one another, some crying, some laughing out of shock. For the first time, fear had shifted. It was no longer sitting on the women's shoulders. It was sitting on Alhaji's. He backed away, sweating, blinking rapidly as though the room itself was turning against him. Malam Sani, the keeper of oaths, the man who never shook, suddenly dropped his staff. It clattered loudly on the floor, echoing like a drumbeat of judgment. And then, a deep cracking sound tore through the halls. It was not thunder. It was not wind. It was the mansion, groaning. Doors that had always shut tightly on their own now swung open with force, banging loudly as though someone unseen was walking through them. Curtains fluttered without breeze. Footsteps echoed where no one stood. The wives gasped, holding on to each other. Even the guards stepped back, the scent of fear thickening the room. Suddenly, the chandeliers flickered violently. The bulbs burst. 1, 2, 3, glass raining down like tiny stars falling. And from somewhere deep within the mansion came a sound that made every skin crawl. A long, low sigh, as if hundreds of silent souls trapped for years were finally whispering. We are free. Alhaji clutched the wall, trembling. His arrogance, usually tall and sharp, collapsed into a heap of shivering cowardice. He screamed, "Stop this! I am the master of this house." But his voice cracked. The house did not obey. For years he had fed it with fear, offerings, and rituals. Tonight, the covenant fed on him instead. Aisha, oldest wife, who had known sorrow the longest, was the first to step toward him. Her eyes no longer held fear. They held memory, anger, and a rebirth of courage. "You caged us," she said softly. "You silenced us. You used our bodies as currency." Her voice quivered but did not break. Another wife stepped forward, Fatima, whose back still bore scars of cleansings. "You ended our womanhood," she said. "Now watch your kingdom fall." Miriam, the youngest, who had once been tricked at only 17, lifted her chin. "We have no wombs because of you. But today, we give birth to courage. And you will face truth." Their voices joined, soft, steady, growing. Alhaji staggered back until he hit the wall. His breath grew sharp, his eyes frantic. "Guards," he yelled. But the guards stood frozen. Their livelihood came from him, but their human fear belonged to something greater. No one moved. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the east wing. The wing Alhaji never allowed anyone to enter. The wives flinched. Nuru clutched Kemi's trembling hand. Everyone turned. A heavy iron door, one reinforced with bolts, ripped itself open, slamming into the wall so hard that dust exploded into the air. Behind that door was a long corridor none of the wives had ever seen, lit with flickering red light, lined with symbols, and stacked with dozens of old calabashes, sealed with black cloth. Those calabashes began to shake, one after another. Knock, 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 as if something inside wanted to come out. Alhaji screamed, "No, do not open." But one calabash burst open with a loud pop. A gust of foul, warm wind hit everyone in the room. The candles blew backward. Even the walls seemed to shudder. Then another calabash cracked. And another. And another. Symbols on the walls flickered like dying fireflies. It was clear. Whatever he had trapped for 20 years had begun to escape. And the house was tired of holding them. A loud bang echoed from outside. Another. Another. The mansion gates, heavy steel, shook violently. Then a shout. "Open up! Police!" The wives stared at each other in shock. None had called for help. But Nuru realized something. Her prayer had gone beyond the ritual room. It had reached ears she could not see. The gates burst open. Torchlights blazed. Boots thundered on the marble. Officers stormed the compound. Alhaji ran toward the back in trance like a fleeing thief. His clothes flapped wildly. He looked nothing like the calm, polished man who once ruled the estate. But the wives were faster. They blocked every exit, every corridor, every path. One officer shouted, "Are you safe? What's happening here?" Aisha stepped forward, voice steady. "We are ready to speak. Everything. All of it." Reporters who had followed the police spilled through the gates next. Camera lights flashed. Microphones stretched forward. Suddenly, the wives, women who had been silenced for years, were surrounded by people ready to listen. And for the first time, they were not afraid to speak. Under the beam of cameras and torches, the truth poured out like water breaking through a dam. Aisha revealed the rituals. Fatima revealed the scars. Miriam explained the padded bellies in fake pregnancy photos. Nuru explained the drink that sealed their wombs forever. Gasps spread across the compound. Even officers wiped tears from their eyes. A journalist, shaking, asked Aisha, "Why didn't you run?" Aisha looked at Nuru. "Fear is a bigger cage than any wall," she said. "And sometimes only one brave voice is enough to break it." Another reporter whispered, "How long has this been happening?" 20 years, Fatima said quietly. 20 years of stolen womanhood. 20 years of hidden screams. 20 years of chained destinies. The country erupted by morning. Radio stations carried the story. News websites crashed. Social media exploded with shock, rage, and sorrow. Alhaji Musa Bawa, once seen as generous and honorable, became the nation's darkest secret exposed. While the police gathered evidence, something strange happened in the mansion. The red corridor, the one with the calabashes, began to crumble. The walls cracked. The symbols flared and faded. A deep, groaning sound rose like a wounded animal. Malam Sani, trembling, whispered, "The covenant has swallowed its keeper." Seconds later, the corridor collapsed. Dust engulfed the air. Wood cracked. Marble shattered. The wing where rituals thrived became rubble. The mansion, once a fortress, had fallen. Completely. Finally. Forever. The wives did not run. They did not hide. They stood together while Alhaji was handcuffed, sweating, crying, begging, stripped of power, stripped of pride, stripped of every illusion he ever wore. And as he was taken away, it was Nuru, not the oldest, not the strongest, but the purest, who whispered, "This house will never swallow another woman again." And it didn't. Because it died the night the covenant broke. When the mansion was emptied, the wives, free for the first time in years, did something unexpected. They stayed together. They formed a foundation in the ashes of the old estate. A home for vulnerable girls. A school for those who had lost their parents like Nuru had. A safe haven where promises were sacred and protection was real. The garden they planted outside the ruins grew unexpectedly fast. Green leaves rose where pain had once lived. Hope grew where fear used to sit. And in the center of it all, Nuru found herself. Not the child who lost everything. Not the bride sealed with a curse. But the woman who fought a covenant with nothing but her voice. Moral lesson. In life, every blessing that is acquired with deceit, manipulation, or evil will eventually collapse under its own weight. No matter how beautiful a house looks from the outside, if its foundation is built on lies, exploitation, or selfishness, it will crumble the moment the truth knocks on its door. Wealth gained by wickedness never lasts. Power acquired through the pain of others becomes a curse, not a crown. True success is not measured by how much you own, but by the people you uplift, the lives you bless, and the purity of your intentions. When you treat people as stepping stones, you will one day fall, because there is no one left to hold you up. Never mock the struggles of the poor. Never look down on those who once trusted you. Never forget that the same life that lifts today can humble tomorrow. Pride destroys faster than failure, and greed blinds faster than darkness. If you want a lasting life, build on humility. If you want peace, build on honesty. If you want a future, build on love. Because at the end of it all, every mansion built on tears must one day return to dust. If this story touched your heart or opened your eyes, don't leave without sharing this video. Someone out there needs this message today. Drop a comment. I choose honesty. I choose peace. Your words might inspire another soul. Like the video to support the channel. Subscribe to Tales by Omo so you never miss these powerful, life-changing stories. And remember, your life is the story you write with your actions. Make it a story worth telling. Bye. See you in our next chapter. Love you guys.